Please welcome Katie Langford from Arts and Homelessness International and the Women and Arts and Homelessness panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Hello and welcome everybody today. I am here in the room and I will be sharing. My name's Katie, and I didn't have to say that because Matt introduced me. But yes. I am joined by the wonderful Nell Hardy here live, and then live on our television screen, which is to my left, but I'm going to talk to the camera. We have Belinda from... Now, Belinda, you're going to have to read out the name of your organisation, because I only put down MUTTI, which is what it sort of stands for, and I've forgotten some of the words. So when you introduce yourself, please tell us the full name of your wonderful museum. We are joined by Alex King from Homeless Link and also Sarah Howe from Groundswell. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves properly. Nell, did I say that you are from Responsibility Theatre?
You didn't, but I kind of did when I was doing the community agreement stuff.
There you go.
So that's me. I'm from Responsibility Theatre. Responsibility Theatre is a theatre and participation arts charity that works to represent and support people who experience trauma.
Thank you. Right, let's go to the screen. Can we go to you, Belinda? Because everyone's hanging on a thread.
We're just getting her in. She's coming in.
Oh, right, Belinda's not there yet. So, all right, everybody hold on. So let's go to Sarah, first of all. Sarah, you work for Groundswell. You're a podcaster, an artist, a sound artist. I don't want to steal your thunder, so take it away.
Cool, thank you so much, Katie, and it's an honour to be here today. At the moment I work for a small charity called Groundswell, where really lived experience is at the heart of everything we do, with 70% of staff and all our volunteers having lived experience of homelessness. We deliver services like peer advocacy, where we make sure that people get the medical treatment that they need to ensure their health. We also do like peer research, where we work with people with lived experience to deliver research projects. And then we have like a progression service where people are supported really well to remove barriers that people experience from kind of moving on from their experience of homelessness or just difficulties in life, which everyone has anyway. So I also am an AHI associate. I make electronic music and hip-hop music. I rap as well and do poetry, and my podcast tends to be like storytelling, but also like findings from research we've done and like telling people stories that they want to tell. I think that's it really. Oh yeah, I might as well mention my freelance stuff as well. So I do freelance anything to do with audio, basically podcasts, recording, sound design, making music to go with anything really. That's me really. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Sarah. That's brilliant. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you a bit later, because you've done some work on research into this very subject. Women and homelessness and health, which is obviously linked. Well-being and art, they are intrinsically linked. Alex, do I have you there?
I'm here. Hi everyone. It's very disconcerting seeing your face on a big screen when you're on a screen. I'm just getting used to that. Very grateful for the invite to the session. As Katie said, I'm Alex Smith. I work at an organisation called Homeless Link. We're a membership charity, so we don't deliver any direct services to people experiencing homelessness. We're kind of what we call second tier organisation, so we do a lot around practice development, policy, campaigning, research, and we represent over around 800 organisations across the UK, so support providers, local authorities, and housing associations. I sit in our national practice development team, and from 2021 to last year, 2024, we had a specific Ending Women's Homelessness project. So we had a dedicated specialist women's homelessness project manager, and I was really fortunate to support that work. So that's what I was going to just share a little bit of today. So it's a bit funny on a hybrid event, so I can pop links in a chat box, or I'm sure links can be sent out if people want to have a look. But we've got a page on our website dedicated to all of the resources and information around ending women's homelessness. And in addition to all of those different practice resources, and also the creation of the women's housing movement, we produced something called the Gendered Lens. So the Gendered Lens is a framework and a workbook to help commissioners, service managers and frontline staff think about the ingredients that are needed to create gender-informed services. The framework and the workbook are all available on the website. Again, I can pop links in the chat box if that's useful. But particularly, I just wanted to mention that the framework was tested and developed in collaboration with women with lived experience of homelessness through a series of art workshops. And those workshops were conducted with Women's Voices group at Your Place Newham, and Bristol Women's Action Group, facilitated by Nelson Trust and Shelter. And the artwork is peppered throughout the workbook, and is also available to download separately as well. It can be found on the same page, and again I can pop the link in. And the use of artwork I think was something quite new for Homeless Link. And it was both a bit of a challenge for us, and also incredibly exciting, I think, in a way of ensuring the voice of women with lived experience was loudly embedded throughout all of that work. So it's really fantastic. I'd really appreciate anyone checking it out, and just wanted to end on a huge thanks to the women who created, shared and gave permission for their artwork to be used.
Thank you so much, Alex. And yeah, we obviously are great advocates that art can be used in any setting and just brings so much more. That I love that you sort of did this research and this project using art as well. So great. That is why we chose you to be on this panel. I'm going to touch on you if you're there, Belinda. Hopefully you're there. No?
Still waiting on break.
We're still. Oh, okay. Well.
We need to add her into the breakout room.
Now, Belinda is from Australia, so that is probably why we might be having a few joining problems, and I can't think what time of the day it is right now in Sydney. It's probably quite late at night. So she's joining us live from Sydney, and she's from, I can't remember the full title, so Museum of Understanding and Tolerance. And inclusion, thank you, Matt. I always forget the I. It's affectionately known as Mutty, and they have a fantastic women's project that happened called the Unseen Art Hub. And if you were at our AHI Awards last year, you would have seen that that project was a finalist. Anyway, I'm going to crack on. I mean, I didn't actually prepare anything to say to introduce this session because it's a rabbit hole that I might not come back out of. I thought about titling the session Women's Rage. I don't know, but we're going to stick to the title of Arts and Homelessness and that sort of intersection with women and gender. And thank you, Alex, because you touched on that so perfectly. That is our opener, really. Why is it important, for a start, and how can we create gender-informed spaces? So why do we need them, and how do we do it? Do you want to go first, Alex, if that's all right?
I can, yeah. I'm wondering, is it possible to share screen to look at some of the artwork, or is that a technical
Unfortunately, no. So sorry. Just because that's why we asked for all the pictures like in advance. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. I popped the link in the chat box, so hopefully people can have a look. And yeah, that would be great. But yeah, I suppose in terms of why it's important and how. So. A little bit of the work that we've done. So I guess the purpose of embedding a gendered lens in homelessness service is to make them more accessible and suitable for women, knowing that women often experience homelessness in different ways to men. So while the roots into homelessness and the experiences of homelessness are unique to each person, and we absolutely need person-centred approaches, we understand that a person's gender and their relationship to their gender directly impacts on their experiences. And that might include risk of gender-based violence, harassment, discrimination, and other kinds of disadvantage. So to consider the impact of gender is to be gender informed. And while gender impacts on everyone's experiences, this framework that we've developed is specifically about embedding a gendered lens focus to meet the needs of women. So homelessness services that don't consider the impact of gender, I think, are often designed in accordance to a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, which often privileges access for men. So, for example, women may have additional physical or psychological safety concerns, and these additional factors are not recognised in the service's design and delivery, which may mean that women avoid accessing it. So in terms of, so I guess that's the why it's important, and the how to do it is really set out in the gendered lens framework, where we have 7 key approaches to service design and delivery that explains how services can embed them and thereby becoming gender informed. So the approaches in the framework could be viewed through a gendered lens. So this means that even if the approaches outlined are already in place within a service, it's necessary to apply a gendered lens to consider if they're working well specifically for women. So for example, a service might be trauma informed, but the impact of a gender on a person's experiences in response to trauma may be different and need to be understood. So the 7 approaches, and I won't go over in a huge amount of detail, but we have co-production, valuing relationships, working together, intersectional, actively inclusive, trauma-informed, and safer spaces. And then in the framework, in the workbook, it goes through how commissioners, managers of services and frontline practitioners can all think about those 7 approaches through a gendered lens, and gives some very practical kind of top tips and ideas, and there are case studies about how to then apply that in practice for services. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main thoughts I guess I've got on why we need gendered services, and then what we've done really to try and support and help others to be able to embed it.
That's wonderful, thank you. I'm going to come to, is that Belinda?
Yeah.
Yay! Right, hold that thought, because Sarah and Nell are going to ask you to jump in with your sort of, things, your take on that first question. But because we've got Belinda here, and everyone's been waiting in anticipation for Belinda to arrive, would you like to just say a little bit about yourself, Belinda? Welcome.
Hi, well, I actually thought you did pretty much a summary of what we're doing and the Unseen Arts Hub. So it's a mobile arts hub, and it consists of a chrome house and a chrome car. And the reasons that they're chrome is because it attracts a lot of attention, and we put it out in public areas, and it's led by women with lived experience of homelessness, so the public are able to actually engage with women and unknowingly, and they discover us because they're attracted by the house and car, and it's surrounded by it's got a gallery window with an exhibition inside of it. You can't get access to the house, which is all about the lack of housing, and the car is about women sleeping in their cars. So it's got all of these messaging plus these chalk quotes from all of the women. But what people discover is that the women that they're actually talking to, asking about the house and car, they're women who've experienced homelessness. And so all those dynamics of their experience that Alex was talking about, they get to have face-to-face discussions by people who happened upon. And it's a very good way of being able to change hearts and minds by a live face-to-face experience with someone and getting rid of all of those stigmas. So we've been touring it around, it's been around the city of Sydney, which is quite, you know, I think we've really to different locations and different sort of councils, and it's gone out to a regional tour, and the service providers that we're working with say that what we didn't really know, because we've got people that help us with all the filming, and they make these little documentaries for us which are really good, and we decided to actually film the service providers really late in the tour, and the responses from the service providers were, we've been waiting so long for you to come. We know that not everybody in the town will have come to see you, but when you go, you're going to be the talk of the town, and you're going to bring women at risk to us because they've seen or heard about the project and about the women. I even got a call the other day to say, I was in this town and I saw the poster on the wall. It's really great. I've also got Jay here. So Jay actually is really quite instrumental in putting this project together with me. So she's in the room as well. And I've got a slide with her story on it. And she's and it would be nice to have her voice in there if it's possible at any point.
Yeah, sure. We've got, I'll tell you how much time we've got left. We've got half an hour left, so I'm going to come back to you if that's all right. Well, I'll ask a couple more questions to other panellists, and then hopefully we're going to have time for people here in the room to also ask a couple of questions. So, right, I'm jumping back and forth. Sorry, I am ADHD. So we're going to go back to that first question. And that was beautifully how you tied that in, Belinda. And it's honestly, I would love to share more about your project, and hopefully everyone will go and look it up. But we were talking about the why, really. Why do we need to sort of think about all of this, why it's important and how we do it. So this was a beautiful example. I'm going to come back to you, Sarah, if that's okay. Sarah, how? I'd just like, because I know you're involved in a research project into this sort of area with Groundswell, and of course through your own work with your, is it Dastigma? Sorry, I just sound like someone's mum, didn't I? I'll let you introduce it, go on. So you've got your own personal sort of podcast which is trying to break down some of these, well, you tell it better. Thank you, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like for that research project, we spoke to like 100 women across London to kind of ask them questions about their health, their mental health, kind of some of the reasons that came about that led to them becoming homeless, and then really looking at the barriers they'd experienced and things that had helped. And I think so many of the women we spoke to said that it meant so much to have a women-only space, be it a hostel, be it sheltered housing, or even a day centre where women can just go, be together, talk, share resources, you know, feel human again, basically, and do the things we all like doing that, you know, are just so difficult sometimes when you don't feel safe, you don't know what's going on. And like Alex said, you know, some of the causes for women becoming homeless are gender-based issues. You know, being kicked out of home because you've become pregnant, or break up of a relationship, and you're homeless with children sometimes as well. You know, domestic violence, trafficking, a lot of gender-based issues. So you really, through a trauma-informed lens, you need to think about those reasons and the trauma that women experience when designing services. Like, we find it best at Groundswell to co-design as much as possible. So talk to people that we want to deliver the service to, and find out really what their needs are, because they know better than anyone else, and that's the thing. So doing that kind of work really makes people feel involved. It really makes them feel ownership of the service, and it is their service, to be fair. They should have ownership of it, and we should just be helping to facilitate it alongside them. So yeah, it is really important, and through art, I don't, just through that, there wasn't many kind of services that did do art, unfortunately, that I came across on that research, but they really valued the ones that did. And for me, art has been such a part of my healing from trauma and my experiences that it's so important alongside providing housing or providing other services that, you know, people experiencing homelessness receive. It should just be held as important as anything else, I think, in my opinion. But yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Sarah. And actually that segues nicely into Nell and all your work around trauma and trauma consciousness, as you're coining the phrase. Would you like to speak a little bit more, just sort of tying up any thoughts you have on that first question?
Yeah, about gender-informed spaces. I mean, I think that it applies to any protected characteristic, surely, that we need to have services that recognise the impact of racism or of migrancy or of homophobia, or could be any sort of thing. But with gender-informed spaces, it's, I think, still just over 50% of the population, right? So it kind of, you know, it's quite extraordinary to think that there is so little understanding of the differences of experience of homelessness for men and for women, considering it's a pretty much even split between the two. And I think that the differences in experiences of homelessness are many. I mean, even if we just think about what Joe Bloggs down the street thinks of homelessness and street homelessness, of course, fewer women experience street homelessness than men, but of those that do, I think that society in general is less okay with women not smelling very good after a couple of days without a shower. I think that society is less comfortable with women relieving themselves in public than they are with men relieving themselves in public. You know, I think it comes down to these things, the difference in the amount of trauma that can be caused, and the amount of stigma, and actually the amount of hatred that can be levelled at women. And then if you then look at the other sides of homelessness, the more hidden sides of homelessness, we know that women are more likely to kind of, especially if they have kids, to be in temporary accommodation, or to be experiencing violence in their own homes. And then of course you've got all of the, well, you're not really homeless, are you? And despite experiencing a lot of the same problems, you get far less of the consideration and far less of the support. And I think that women's experiences of homelessness, because, I mean, as someone who's never had to sleep on the street, I'm hesitant to put words in people's mouths, but I have heard that there's quite a lot of community around street homelessness quite a lot of the time. And women's experiences of homelessness are often so lonely. I mean, so lonely, because you're put in a flat a million miles away from anyone you know, and a toddler that won't stop screaming. And you're in a shelter where you're kind of frightened to leave your room because of the violence that's happening outside, or whatever it is. So I think that the nature of the experience is often so different that really you need a whole different approach often.
No, that's really well put. I mean,
was that my?
Yes. Sorry.
This is a responsibility theatre project. Interestingly, this was an accidental women-only space. So we've had a couple of women-only projects. One was with women who've experienced having their children taken into care. One that we're working on now is with Arabic and Kurdish-speaking migrant and asylum-seeking women who have kids under the age of 5. And this was our project about spiritual abuse. And we just put out, we opened it to survivors of spiritual abuse, and I thought it was really interesting that everyone who came forward was female. I mean, this is separate from homelessness in a way, but I think there's a similar thing around spiritual abuse in that, I mean, if you look at the latest kind of scandal of John Smythe and the abuse that led to the Archbishop of Canterbury resigning and saying that he was doing so as a big, someone's head has to roll, even though he was pretty much forced into a corner. I mean, that case was all about boys and young men being abused, and there have been countless cases just as shocking of women being abused within spiritual settings, and the press doesn't care as much for some reason. So I think that might have played a part in why it was women who felt the need to come forward, because women experiencing those things just don't feel seen and don't have the support available to them.
No, thank you so much, Nell. And you can see, just we've sort of barely dipped our toe into this subject. It is, I think we could have done multiple panels of hours on this, and we're not going to get to cover everything we want, but I do really, sorry Belinda, I don't think I came across very well earlier. I definitely want to hear from Jay. Sorry, I might have thought that and said it not out loud, but it'd be wonderful to have Jay as well. And really, we wanted to also touch upon all these different experiences, and how it's come up with the question of how women who identify as disabled are positioned in conversations about homelessness as artists and advocates and knowledge holders. So, sorry, I didn't say that question very well. So the question is, everybody, how are women who identify as disabled positioned in conversations about homelessness as artists, advocates and knowledge holders? That might not be the question you want to wade in on. Is there anyone keen to wade in on that?
Oh yes,
yes,
absolutely.
Belinda,
Yeah.
Great, go for
because
it.
we have a lot of focus on women with disability in the Unseen Arts Hub, whether it's as a result of trauma and post-traumatic stress, mental illness, but also physical disability. So Jay's a woman with a hearing impairment. One of the women actually I gave her this question, and I wouldn't mind just actually reading her answer if that's okay.
Please, yeah.
Her name's Nicole Lee. She was the head of People with Disability Australia until recently, and she became homeless as a result of domestic violence. She has a spinal injury, this is what she said. The harsh reality is we're not usually seen to be included in the conversation. We're positioned as passive recipients of the world around us. That brings up much broader issues for us. The way that we depict homelessness within the community and attitudes towards disabled women renders us incredibly invisible. When there's images of able-bodied people down on their luck, people with disability are seen as merely pity porn, and they are seen as less deserving because of the charitable model of disability. She also says she's been primed her whole life to blame herself for what's happening to her, and that she should be grateful for anything that she gets, even if the support that she gets is unsafe. She actually became homeless at 16 and then later again in life. And then she said, the short answer is we can't be what we can't see. That is, we change how we position what homelessness looks like, and it's fair to say we're positioned outside of that conversation.
Thank you so much. That is incredibly powerful. And I believe we've got Jay in the breakout room now as well. So if you feel like you want to say anything, Jay, maybe say hello to everybody so we can sort of see who you are and introduce yourself.
Hello, people. My name is Jay. I sign this. I don't sign very often. I actually know a couple of people. I can't remember how to pronounce Brayesh, I think.
Oh, Brayesh,
and
yes.
I think there's one other person from Homeless Link. I recognise a name. From created, it's nearly 10 o'clock in Sydney, so I'm very tired.
I was going to say it must be very late.
I'm really excited to be here, and I've got massive FOMO. So I want to see you guys next year. I'm relying very heavily on captions.
Right.
I've recently discovered it, so I've got my hearing aids in. So it's interesting for me navigating the world. So I was brought up in a white, I'm Thai, and I was brought up in a white Australian family and brought up not to acknowledge my hearing capacity or lack thereof. So when I became independent, so I left home in a not very good situation, and then that was when I was able to reclaim myself and identify myself how I want. So so there's some interesting cultural stuff. So in service accessibility and things like that, I've struggled a lot because services have made assumptions about me. You know, they look at me and they see me as Asian, and I struggle with that. So, you know, I am choosing how I want to define it, and I like people to ask me rather than just making an assumption. And with my hearing, I'm learning that it's okay for me to get the access support that I need. I don't need to struggle, and asking people to slow down, look at me, repeat. There's no shame in that. So it has been a learning journey for me, and to have respect in that. I've found that in service provision, I don't think it's a fault, but it's something that I think we need to be mindful of, is having these services that are all underfunded, is that we still need to make it accessible. So if I need people to slow down, or I want them to wear a microphone, then I'd like people to respect me in that. You know, I don't want people to fob me off or say it's too hard. I have a right to that. And too often services have said no, too busy, too hard, I don't want that. And that's not okay. So that's an interesting thing that I've had to battle with accessing services. So I do have lived experience of homelessness. Another thing that has been difficult for me is that I had a little bit of experience in youth homelessness, which was good because I found that there's a lot of youth services and there's a lot of women's services for women who are leaving family and domestic violence, women who have dependent children, but I have not any of that.
Chris, can you turn my phone off? Can you turn that off, please?
Yes, so for me, there's actually very little services available for me because I'm just not eligible for that. Most people think women's services, yeah, they've got children. Yes, they're leaving family and domestic violence. And so that's where the funding goes to. But as a single woman with none of that, they're not listening to why I became homeless. So there are other things as well, and funding and services need to be available for me as well.
Yeah.
And so that I respect, and I know that everyone deserves services, and that does include me. So that's been an interesting thing for me to sit and listen to, because these other women with children, they are my friends. And I love them and I want to support them, but I also want to receive support as well. So,
Thank you. Yeah,
that's a bit about me.
That's brilliant, Jay. And yeah, I don't think you should ever apologise for having your own access needs and getting those met. That, you know, that shouldn't be the exception. You know, it should happen every day. But thank you for everything you've said there, and you know, and you're correct. You're so courageous and confident in speaking about this, and you know, I think we're beginning to see that whilst we're talking about women, arts, and homelessness, there's so many different experiences. Someone said, we know all experiences of homelessness are unique. Oh, sorry. I'm going to come back. Yes, sorry. I was going to link into you, Alex. Sorry. Would you like to say something?
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Jay, for sharing that. I haven't really got anything more to add on the question around disability and general intersectionality, because I think you've beautifully explained through your experience exactly everything that I would want to share. But I think it's something just about what you mentioned, Jay, and something, Nell, that you mentioned as well, and I think that's something about the definition of homelessness, and certainly in England, the verification process of homelessness, and the fact that really does favour men's experiences of homelessness being kind of very visibly on the street and bedded down, as the term is, kind of can be verified because they're asleep on the streets, and that's often not women's experiences because of safety concerns. We know that women experience homelessness you know, by travelling on public transport all night, or in and out of accommodation, maybe kind of sex working, for example, or, you know, finding some way to stay safe but are nevertheless still experiencing homelessness. And I think that kind of creates two problems, really. Firstly, we don't have a good enough picture of women's homelessness. So exactly as Jay was explaining, I don't think the evidence is there in terms of making arguments for funding. And it's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation then, about trying to secure enough funding. And then also it's kind of from a commissioning perspective and decision-making perspective, there's often a lack of understanding about what women need, because those experiences are more hidden and less is understood and known. So I just think that feels like a really important part of this conversation about the way that we acknowledge and count homelessness, and how that doesn't really represent women effectively. And just a shout out to our colleagues at Solace Women's Aid and SHP, who have led work around the Women's Homelessness Census, and thinking about how to count women differently, and for that to be truly representative of women's experiences, I think is hugely important. So sorry, Katie, I've slightly gone off piste there.
Okay, no worries, Alex.
I felt like that was a really important part of this to mention.
It's a very, very good point about recording. I mean, I've met a lot of women when I was doing research as a peer researcher at Groundswell, as it happens, Sarah, a long time ago. And I'm still haunted by a woman that I met that, you know, and I don't think this is uncommon, who made herself purposely unattractive and smelly and more ugly, anything to protect herself. I don't know why it really stayed with me, and maybe there's a resonance for myself at some times as well, maybe. I don't know. But, you know, a lot of this is unseen, as you say. So that's a great name for your project, the Unseen Hub. Women are unseen. They are ghosts riding the night buses to stay safe.
Could I follow on from that, just going a little bit back to disability, because this is a project that RAT, my company, is going to be starting quite soon with a organisation called The Bridge, which is based in West London and works to try to end tokenism around women's involvement in health research. I think in the same way that typical views of homelessness are quite male-centric, our whole understanding of human health is incredibly male-centric. Women are about 3 times less likely to have their pain examined if they go to A&E because it's counted as hysteria, and that means that a lot of women's health conditions deteriorate far more than they really need to, and that can push women into homelessness because then they lose their jobs and they lose their homes and everything. And I think women are also much more likely to be written off as hysterical, and mental health problems in women are far more likely to result in lost cause than with men. And so I think that there's in terms of the actual question, which was around how are disabled women positioned in topics about conversations about homelessness and arts and homelessness, etc. I think we're having to advocate for ourselves far more than others, because we're the only ones who have any idea of what we need, because we've had to go and find it out for ourselves, because nobody else is helping us.
And so really this ties into my sort of last question, which I think you said earlier, Belinda, that, you know, we've heard about all this great work and the breadth of the issues, but how do we then sort of go beyond an echo chamber? How do we sort of actually ensure our work sways hearts and minds and moves beyond this and actually is heard? So I guess that is what you're all doing as people, as artists, and with the art projects. And we heard from Alex as well, again, using art, I suppose. Not that I'm trying to steer this conversation, but how do we stop feeling this women's rage and actually get this information out there to make tangible change? Who hasn't spoken for a long time? I don't know if you've got anything to say on that, Sarah.
Yeah, why not? It needs to be built in at a commissioning level, doesn't it? So that when you're designing a service, it's considered, and there's money for it, and there's time, and there's resources, and there's consultation with people who are going to be using the service. So yeah, it needs to come from the very top of when people are commissioning and funding these projects, and just be held as highly as anything else, really. And I guess
it's everything that you stand for is about reducing stigma. That is your name. It's so I'm just thinking about how you're actively doing it yourself as well through your own artistic practice.
Yeah, well, myself and a friend of mine who's also got lived experience of homelessness, we actually have our own podcast called Sacred Cows UK, where we openly discuss like the issues and some of the traumas that we've been through, in order to really like open up a discussion and a debate, and also like reduce the stigma and shame, because I know so many people that don't want to talk about their experiences or feel such a sense of shame to do that, that it just makes their situation worse because there's no one to share it with. And I think as someone with lived experience, it's partly my responsibility to change the status quo and remove some of the stigma to do with it as well, because it's just really important, I think, to do that, and raise awareness of the issues, really help people to understand that it really could happen to anybody, and it's really important to support people experiencing homelessness in whatever way, and not judge them and not blame them for their own situation, and look at the wider issues like the housing crisis and universal credit and just 0 hours contracts and stuff like that, which impacts a lot of people and they have no control over it. So it's just exploring like all the issues and looking at the wider issues, and not just kind of blaming the person for what goes down.
Thank you, Sarah. And you do that brilliantly in your podcast. It is a very honest and, amazing podcast. And, I wish we had more time to talk about that intersectionality of all the crossovers with criminal justice. And we all know lots of other things overlap. we are fastly running out of time, so I'd love to just come to you over in Australia, Belinda and Jay. I don't know if we wanted to sort of just add in a little bit on this question. Let's keep it short because then we can have a couple of questions from the audience. Thanks so much.
I think the workshops that we do are one of those things. So there's workshops that enable people to come. Besides the artwork, they can engage more. So it's sort of grown from, first of all, just being the car to then the house, and then the artworks, and then the workshops. And we've got a beautiful exhibition that we're taking to New York with the women, and we're taking 14 of them over to New York, and we're raising funds like crazy to make it happen in March, so that they are speaking at a forum on about women, disability, violence and homelessness at the NGO Forum for the United Nations. And they've got all the accreditation to actually go and see the operations and working of it. And it's such an important thing for these women to feel that they belong, they have space, they have a place and a space to actually be in this environment and be heard. And the amount of empowerment that this gives is great, and I hope that it will even strengthen our project as it continues. But the workshops, all of the workshops that the women have basically said, I'd really like to do this. I think that we've got a wonderful trans woman who does millinery hats. So in that moment, she's sharing all of her stories, and people are sharing their stories. We've got a sea of shoes that are shoes for all different sorts of women. A lot of women have experienced, the bulk of them are women who've experienced homelessness, who've come and given their shoes. And there's a tag and there's stories on the shoes, and people wander forever around these shoes listening to these stories, reading the stories. And we've got, in Australia, we've got First Nations people, and so we've got a very strong contingency of First Nations people, and there's a weaving workshop, and it attracts so many people to come to it. So it has this weaving workshop has a double purpose. So I've got a little message from Peter, who actually runs one of the First Nations workshops. I'll just quickly, because I feel like I have to be, when we're talking about inclusion and women, this is really important.
Very.
So her perception is that she's seen as an angry black woman, that she's often, she's hardly heard, she's not often believed or understood, let alone supported, that there's lateral violence within her community, which creates further isolation. So she's facing multiple layers of discriminations that happen within her own community because she reported the sexual assault of her daughter, and received lateral violence from one of the other family members who didn't believe it, which is a common thing in domestic violence. And she runs a Coolamon working workshop around for school children where they build a Coolamon. So it's like a tray, and when you go and hunt and gather, and you put objects in the tray and you bring it back. So she teaches children that when you've got your tray filled with the things that you've been given in your life, question all of these things and decide whether you want them in your life. Take control over what's in your Coolamon. And Dixie, who works with us, then takes the next phase up to women who are older around domestic violence and risk, and being able to speak out in safe, culturally safe environment, which is really a specific thing for First Nations people who are they are the most marginalised group in our country. And of course then that's followed, so if you're a First Nations person with disability, you can't face more marginalisation than that. And then of course we've got all of our, because we are a country of immigrants, and so it belongs to that next group. So getting your voice heard is really, really hard, and being able to create a way, which I feel we've done a great job, all of us together, absolutely all of us together, in making sure that it is absolutely led, directed in every way by the women in the project.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the really weird things is that people don't think it ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And we've actually we lost our house in 2009 in a storm, and it's taken us until about 6 weeks ago to actually be told that they're not going to.
Oh, Belinda, I'm so
send
sorry.
us onto the street permanently.
Yeah. Oh, Belinda, that's
So,
heartbreaking.
yeah. So anyway, that's, you know, I don't really sort of talk about it too much because it's actually been a struggle for all of this time anyway, and I keep it in the back, and when anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's not important.
Thank you for sharing and sharing something so personal as well. I really wish we had a lot more time for this panel, and my dearest wish is that we get to sort of see some of these projects that you've done in person one day. I've seen pictures of the Unseen Art Hub, the shoes, the field of shoes. It's really impactful, and amazing work you are all doing in actually, you know, sort of breaking that echo chamber to actually sort of touch people's hearts and make this tangible change. Is it okay if I overrun for just a couple of minutes and take two?
Promise to be super quick.
Okay, yes, just one from Alex and then maybe one question. Okay, go on, Alex.
Really, really quickly, it was just to say that I think when we're creating art, it's really important about kind of thinking about the audience, and the artwork that we created was very much kind of with that commissioner, service provider, audience in mind. I think if we're thinking about kind of general public and raising understanding and awareness and attention on women's homelessness, then we really need to think about kind of what exists out there. And I just wanted to say to everyone at some point today, if you get your phone out and you Google homeless person and you look at the images, every single one of the images that exist is a man. The only women that exist in those pictures are supporters and people that are going to help someone. They're all on the street, they're all begging, they all visibly look a particular way, and we've got a problem, I think, with that stereotype. So I think that there is a real role for art and visual arts about how we can disrupt that and how we can really start to tell the story of women and get a better understanding of what women's experiences of homelessness are.
It's a shame you weren't here for the photographic representation panel yesterday. That is a really, really brilliant point. Thanks for that, Alex. Do we have any burning questions? Like, I don't know how I'm going to choose, but would anybody like to ask any of the panelists anything? I'll go for
I just
you.
want to throw something to the pot.
Can you get the mic? Right, sorry, just so the people online can hear
I
you.
should know.
Thanks, Wally.
Sorry, hi panel, thank you so much for that. I just want to throw something in the pot because it's not something that I hear about. It's the impact that homelessness for children and girls in particular who then grow up to be women. Nobody's having,
Really good.
no one's having that conversation, and I just want to throw that out there because that's been very obvious to me. Just being here this week's been a godsend for me. And it's not something I've ever spoken about in public, but my homelessness was as a child and adolescent, and it's impacted my life. Still does.
Yeah.
And it's never not been a conversation at all. So
No, it's something I think you've been working a little
Yeah.
bit around, well, not a little bit, quite a large amount, and actually getting some laws changed.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't women specific, but a lot of the work that I've been doing with mothers of kids under the age of 5. So we produced a play called Milestones, which was a semi-verbatim piece based on some interviews that had been done with parents. And the post-show discussion led to the creation of a petition to have the council's guidance on homelessness changed to guarantee a cot for every household that had a kid under the age of 2. And it was a teeny tiny thing, but it got passed. So kind of, you know, it's a bit of proof that the arts can genuinely change things. I mean, it follows on nicely to what my thing around the echo chamber conversation was going to be like. When I think about reaching big audiences, I immediately think TV, right? Because that's, if you put something on TV, people will see it, even if it's accidentally, they just will. And I feel like a lot of the TV dramas that do address issues that involve. Sorry, I'm going a bit today. Some of the a lot of the TV dramas that address issues like domestic violence and relationship breakdowns and things like that do so from quite a middle class perspective. And, you know, the world absolutely still needs to hear that, because we're shit at knowing how to support women, no matter how they were born. I'm sorry to swear, but it's really true. Here's the female rage coming out. But like, there's a difference between an experience of domestic violence when, you know, we tend to see somebody in a very nicely decorated house moving from a nicely decorated house in which they're being hit by their partner into a nicely decorated, slightly bigger house with their parents in dramas, or kind of having a top dog lawyer job, and so immediately being able to go and rent a nice penthouse apartment somewhere. You know, we've got this obsession with niceness, or like only being able to take one little bit of not niceness at a time. So if you then add the not niceness of not having any money, not having any family, having several children to raise, having children who you're trying to raise to know that they deserve everything as women that men deserve, when everything in the world around them is screaming the opposite because of the position that you're being put in. And the other side of that, I think, is we need more women who experience homelessness to be making the art that people see. Yes. And a huge part of that is provisions in our arts creating workplaces that allow for that. Childcare in rehearsal spaces and in workshopping spaces, or like working hours that allow mums to drop their kids off and pick them up again. Recognition of severe period pain as something that will prevent you from coming in sometimes. Recognition of certain menopause symptoms as something that will require you to be away for several weeks sometimes. You know, I'm going to stop.
I know, sorry now. I mean, and you know how passionate I think I nearly lost my last job because of menopause. I didn't know what was happening, perimenopause. I couldn't string a sentence together. But anyway, we have run over. I'm so sorry. Yeah, please. Yes, sorry, I forgot. I forgot that there were online comments as well. Let's give you a shout. Go.
Mary from Doncaster has just said that's something we see clearly in Doncaster. Under SWEP protocol, we had no women-only provisions bar hotel placements. Lots of men slept in a local church hall. And a question as well. A lot of my role is campaigning to open a homelessness day centre. How can I create conversations we need for this day centre to open, and also prioritise women-only spaces within these conversations?
Wow. I mean, we can continue this via email. That is something we can do. So do email us if you would like. You can email us at hello@artshomelessint.com. So any of your questions do. If we didn't get time to answer them today, I'll put them to the panel if you don't mind, everybody. I think it would be a really nice conversation to carry on. I want to thank you all. It's been a very powerful panel. I feel like we needed like a half day at least, not an hour. So I hope everyone got to say a little bit of what they wanted to say. And I think let's keep this on the agenda and have it at the next summit. Thank you so much for everybody online and in person, and thank you to all our panellists, and special good night for Belinda and Jay in Sydney. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you so much to Katie for chairing that so brilliantly. One just extra thing is the Arts and Homelessness International, as a network, we're trying to gather amazing information and share it as much as we can. And with that in mind, we are creating a new quality framework for arts and homelessness, or a practice guide, or conditions that people want to see as a minimum requirement in arts and homelessness projects. I'm pointing this way because there's some flip charts on the board if you're in London. Online, please contribute. We can put things like the gendered lens, and I want to reassure the panellists that we were showing slides of your work, which you probably couldn't see, but we saw some of the brilliant stuff that you've been doing. Thank you so much. We're back at 12 o'clock with Homelessness and Arts and the Environment. Thank you so much. Thank you online.
Thanks, everybody.